Wrong hallway, Stan. This place isn't for someone like you.
Let go. Don't make me say it again.
Bullies ripped the shy girl's shirt. Her judo throw sent them flying down the hallway. The hallways of Jefferson High fell silent as the sound of ripping fabric rang out. Ellie stood there, her cheeks flushed, clutching the torn piece of fabric from the shoulder of her old flannel shirt. Jake smirked. "Oh, sorry. Too poor to buy a new shirt." But then a light flashed in the shy girl's eyes. The hallways at Jefferson High School in suburban Ohio are filled with the sounds of chatter and slamming lockers. It's a chilly October afternoon, and students are gathered in a small room waiting for the final bell to ring. Sunlight slants through the high windows onto the cold tile floors, casting long streaks of light across the gray of the 1960s-era school. Amidst the bustling crowd, Ellie Martinez, a 17-year-old girl with curly brown hair that fell loosely over her shoulders, walked silently. Her oversized round-frame glasses slid down the bridge of her nose, and she had to push them up constantly. Her large, gentle brown eyes were always looking down, as if searching for an invisible escape route. She hugged a thick stack of books tightly like a shield, trying to blend into the noisy crowd. Ellie is almost invisible to most people, except for a trio of seniors, Jake Morrison, Mitch Kelly, and Carla Stevens. Jake, a tall football player with perfectly combed blonde hair, is the son of a wealthy businessman in town. Carla, tanned and platinum blonde, is a cheerleader with an uncomfortably haughty attitude. Mitch, though not as tall as Jake, is still muscular and wears a wicked grin. The three dominate the school with their smirks and sharp words. They look for vulnerable targets, and Ellie is the perfect prey. An orphan living with her frail grandmother with no friends to protect her, always keeping her head down and avoiding conflict. What they don't know is that Ellie's traumatic past has forged a will of steel. She lost her father in a car accident when she was 5, and her mother died of cancer when she was 12. Her grandmother Rosa, a Mexican woman with kind eyes but hardened hands from hard work, raised her with love and stories of her courageous ancestors. Ellie's particular strength lies in the quiet afternoon hours at the small dojo in the south of town, where she has been training judo for the past 2 years under the guidance of Sensei Paul Nakamura. It's a secret known only to Rosa. The sessions have helped her regain her confidence and learn to control her inner anger. The central issue is not just the bullying. Ellie deals with her sense of powerlessness in the face of injustice, her fear of being the center of attention, and most importantly, her internal struggle between suffering in silence or standing up for herself. She knows she has the ability to fight back, but she fears that once she crosses that line, her fragile life will be shattered. Ellie sensed something was off the moment she walked into school that day. There was a strange tension in the air, like a storm was brewing. Jake's eyes followed her as she walked across the gym, his evil grin wider than usual. Mitch and Carla exchanged knowing glances as if they were planning something. During lunch break, as Ellie tried to sneak quietly to the library, her safe haven, Jake's voice rang out over the noise of the hallway. "Hey, bookworm, where's your fancy sweater today?" The group chuckled, circling her like vultures closing in on their prey. Ellie quickly ducked her head, clutching her books tighter, trying to squeeze through the small gap next to Carla. But Carla grabbed the sleeve of her old flannel, the only one that still smelled of her mother, the one Rosa had patched over and over again with endless love. "Don't run away, little sister." Carla hissed, her red-painted nails digging into the fabric. A sharp tug. The sound of tearing fabric filled the air like thunder in a storm. The Jefferson High hallways fell silent, hundreds of eyes focused on them. Ellie stood frozen, her cheeks burning red, her hands shaking as she clutched the torn fabric around her shoulders, trying to hide the white bra underneath. Jake stepped closer, his hoarse voice full of malice. "Oh, sorry. Too poor to buy new clothes. Or did your grandmother forget to teach you how to dress properly?" The words were like a slap in the face. No one was allowed to speak of Rosa in that tone. No one was allowed to insult the woman who had devoted her life to raising her. In an instant, all the lessons of patience, of avoiding conflict, of keeping to oneself in order to survive, all vanished. The opportunity presented itself the moment Jake took a step forward, his hand reaching out to push her down. In Ellie's head, Sensei Paul's voice rang out clearly. "Judo isn't just about strength, Ellie. It's about using your opponent's strength against them. It's about turning weakness into advantage. The crucial decision was made in a split second. Ellie dropped the books to the floor with a loud thud, standing up straight for the first time in years. Her usually gentle, timid eyes suddenly burned with a fierce fire, like the eyes of a warrior about to enter her final battle. It all happened so fast. In one swift movement, she grabbed Jake's outstretched arm, her fingers latching onto his wrist and elbow, just as she had practiced thousands of times in the dojo. With a perfect twist of her hips, osotogari, one of the most basic yet most effective techniques in judo, she threw Jake over her shoulder. Jake Morrison, a big boy weighing nearly 170 pounds, flew in a perfect parabola and fell to the cold tile floor with a loud crash. He slid a meter across the smooth floor, his white shirt now gray with dirt. The hallway was paralyzed. Mitch and Carla gasped, eyes wide with disbelief. Jake lay sprawled on the floor, pale, trying to catch his breath after the sudden fall. Ellie stood there, chest-heaving, fists clenched, her eyes scanning the crowd before stopping at Mitch and Carla. "Who wants to try next?" she asked, her voice eerily calm, completely different from the shy girl everyone knew. News of Ellie's judo throw spread through the school like wildfire. Before the end of the school day, the video filmed by a student had been shared hundreds of times on social media. The hashtag #JudoGirl began trending in local student circles. When Ellie walked into her final English class of the day, an awkward silence fell. Some students whispered and pointed as she passed. Lisa Chen, an Asian girl who usually sat alone in the front row, turned to smile and nod respectfully. Marcus Thompson, a skinny black boy, who Jake often teased about his height, stood up and gave a small round of applause. But there were also hostile looks. Jake and Carla's close group of friends, the beneficiaries of the school's brutal hierarchy, looked at her with hostility. Carla's best friend, Brittany Walsh, glared at her viciously and whispered something to those around her. Ms. Wilson, a middle-aged woman with silver-gray hair, entered the classroom with a serious expression. She had heard the rumors and looked at Ellie with a loving but worried gaze. "Ellie, can you stay after school? I need to talk to you." After the other students left, Miss Wilson sat down next to Ellie. "You know I can't support violence," she said softly, "but I also understand that you've been through a lot. It's important that you prepare for what comes next." Ellie nodded, feeling heavy inside. She knew her actions would have consequences. Jake was not the type to let such public humiliation slide. That evening, Ellie huddled in a corner of Sensei Paul's small judo studio. The dojo was in an old industrial building with faded tatami mats and the heavy scent of old wood. It was the only place she felt truly safe. Sensei Paul Nakamura, a 68-year-old Japanese-American veteran with a stern face but warm eyes, walked over and sat down next to her. He wore a simple white guy, the worn black belt around his waist, a testament to decades of training. "I heard you used my technique today," he said, his voice warm but stern. Ellie nodded, but her eyes were still filled with worry. "I don't want to hurt anyone, Sensei, but I can't take it anymore. They tore my clothes, insulted my grandmother." Paul sighed deeply, placing a calloused hand on her shoulder. "Judo isn't just about throwing people, Ellie. It's about protecting what's important to you, about standing up for yourself and for those who can't protect themselves. But you need to be careful. Those kids aren't easy to get away with." He was right. The next morning when Ellie arrived at school, she found her locker had been broken open. The lock had been cut, the door was open, and her books were strewn across the floor. The novel To Kill a Mockingbird she had been reading was torn to shreds, its yellow pages scattered like autumn leaves. A red piece of paper was taped to the middle of the closet door, written in ugly marker handwriting, "You will pay. This is not over today." Ellie clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms until they bled. Anger and anxiety rose in her. She picked up her books and papers, trying to stay calm as other students passed by, looking at her with curiosity or pity. Tommy Rodriguez, a skinny 10th grader with a baby face, ran to help her pick up her books. "Ellie, I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have intervened yesterday." "It's okay, Tommy." Ellie smiled sadly. "You have no obligation to protect me." But she knew in her heart that the silence of the bystanders was part of the problem too. Not just Jake, Mitch, and Carla, but the silent system that allowed the bullies to operate unchecked. During lunch break, Ellie decided to confront the problem head-on. She found Carla standing alone near the basketball court, texting on her phone. For the first time in her life, Ellie took the initiative to approach the bully instead of running away. "I don't want any trouble," Ellie said, her voice shaking but firm. "Stop. We can work this out." Carla looked up from her phone, a smirk on her face, but a hint of unease in her eyes. She had seen Ellie's unexpected strength and no longer considered her an easy target. "Who do you think you are?" Monster Carla hissed, but took a step back. "You're only good at sneak attacks." Jake wasn't prepared, but next time will be different. Before Ellie could reply, a scream of pain rang out from the dining room. They both turned to see a familiar sight that still made Ellie's blood boil. Tommy Rodriguez, the boy who had helped her that morning, was surrounded by Jake and Mitch near the dining table. Jake was holding Tommy's carton of milk, pouring it slowly over his head, while Mitch held Tommy's hands. The ketchup from the food tray spilled all over his white shirt, creating blood-red stains. "This is the price for helping the nerd," Jake said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Who else wants to be a hero?" Without thinking, Ellie lunged forward. Her anger was stronger than yesterday. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about protecting other innocent people. "Let him go!" she shouted, her voice echoing throughout the cafeteria. Jake slowly turned his head, a sinister smile appearing on his face. "Oh, the little hero has arrived. Want another fight? This time I'm ready." A crowd quickly gathered, dozens of phones raised to film. The tension in the air was so intense it could have been cut with a knife. Ellie took a deep breath, putting her feet into the fighting stance that Sensei Paul had taught her. But then an old but authoritative voice rang out, cutting through the tense atmosphere. "Enough, Principal Morrison." A tall man with gray hair and a stern face strode through the crowd. He wore a gray suit and red tie, his razor-sharp eyes scanning the entire scene. Behind him were two teachers and a security guard. Dismissed immediately, he ordered, his voice devoid of mercy. "All classes, Jake Morrison, Mitch Kelly, Carla Stevens, and Ellie Martinez, come to my office now." The crowd of students reluctantly dispersed, still looking back with regret at missing what had been a promising duel. Tommy was led to the bathroom by a teacher to clean up his clothes, his eyes looking at Ellie with deep gratitude. In the principal's office, a large room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and graduation photos, 5 people sat across from each other in tense silence. Jake sat bolt upright, his arrogance still evident. Mitch kept looking down at his shoes, and Carla stared out the window. Jake was the first to speak, his voice confident, one accustomed to getting out of trouble. "Sir, I'm reporting that Ellie Martinez attacked me without cause. I was just having a casual conversation with a classmate when she attacked me." "This is serious violence." Carla nodded theatrically in agreement. "Yes, I witnessed it too. Ellie is very aggressive and dangerous. I think she has psychological problems." Mitch, though uncomfortable, agreed. I feel the same way." Ellie sat silently, her heart heavy. She knew that the words of a shy orphan girl with no voice in the school could not compete with the consistent testimony of 3 students from influential families. Jake's father was a prominent lawyer, Carla's mother was the president of the PTA, and Mitch's family had good connections with the school board. Principal Morrison sat behind his large desk, his pale blue eyes scanning each face. He had been in education for more than 30 years and could read his students like an open book. "Ellie," he said softly, "would you like to tell your version?" Ellie looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "Sir, She paused, knowing that no matter what she said, who would believe an orphan girl against 3 well-off students? Principal Morrison was silent for a long moment, then opened his desk drawer and took out a small black USB drive. He plugged it into the computer and turned the screen so everyone could see. The hallway and cafeteria cameras caught it all. He said, his gaze fixed sternly on Jake. "Let's review the facts. The first video shows yesterday's hallway scene. The images are crystal clear. Carla grabs Ellie's shirt, deliberately ripping it. Jake taunts her about her poverty. And most importantly, Ellie only reacts after being overly provoked. The crowd of students in the video stands still, not a single one speaking up to defend her. The second video shows Tommy being bullied in the cafeteria with Jake and Mitch clearly being the instigators, while Ellie only intervenes to protect a younger student. Jake paled, his eyes wide with horror as he saw his actions exposed before the principal. Carla lowered her head, her shoulders shaking, and Mitch mumbled, I'm sorry, I didn't want to." Principal Morrison paused the video and turned to Ellie, his eyes softening completely. "Girl, why didn't you report this bullying sooner?" Ellie hesitated, her voice as small as a mosquito's. "I thought no one would care. I thought telling would only make things worse." That answer was like a knife stabbing into the conscience of everyone in the room. Principal Morrison sighed deeply, realizing how the education system had failed to protect its most vulnerable students. Principal Morrison stood up and opened the door. Sensei Paul walked in, followed by Tommy and 5 other students that Ellie didn't expect. Among them were Lisa Chen, Marcus Thompson, and Amy Patterson, a girl who used to be Carla's friend, but had witnessed too much bullying to stay silent anymore. Tommy, who still had ketchup stains on his shirt, spoke first. "Mr. Principal, Ellie doesn't deserve to be punished. She stood up for me and a lot of other students. Jake and his gang have been bullying us for months." Lisa Chen, her voice trembling, but determined. "I saw them pouring food on Marcus last week. I wanted to intervene, but I was afraid. When I saw Ellie stand up, I felt like I could be brave too." Marcus nodded. "Jake once put my head in a locker and locked it. I didn't dare tell anyone for fear of retaliation. But yesterday, when I saw Ellie defend herself, I understood that we don't have to endure it forever." Amy Patterson, eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry, Ellie. I knew what Carla and Jake did was wrong, but I was afraid that if I told them, I would become the next target. I'm a coward." Sensei Paul placed his hand on Ellie's shoulder, his voice deep and warm. "Ellie is one of the bravest students I have ever taught. She never used Judo to attack, only to defend herself and protect others. That is the true spirit of martial arts." Ellie sat there, tears welling up in her eyes. She had always thought she was invisible to others, but now she realized her actions had touched other souls, inspiring them to find courage. Principal Morrison looked at Jake, Mitch, and Carla with deep disappointment. "You have not only bullied one student, but created an environment of fear for the entire school." Jake Morrison and Carla Stevens, "You are suspended for a week and must attend a counseling program." Mitch Kelly, "Because you have shown remorse and a willingness to change, you will only be sentenced to 2 weeks of community service." He turned to Ellie, his eyes filled with respect. "As for you, Ellie Martinez, you are not being punished. Instead, I want you to be the school's anti-bullying ambassador. Are you willing to help create a safer environment for all students?" Ellie nodded, feeling like her voice mattered for the first time. "I'm ready." That evening, Ellie sat in her familiar dojo, clutching her white belt. The soft yellow light cast a soft glow over the worn tatami mats, creating the peaceful atmosphere she needed after an emotional day. Sensei Paul came and sat beside her, holding a small wooden box in his hand. "You have made me proud today," he said. "But there is something I need to tell you." He opened the box. Inside was an old photo, faded and wrinkled. In the photo, a young man about 30 years old wearing a white judo gi standing next to a boy about 8 to 9 years old. The man had a warm smile and kind eyes that were very familiar. "That's your father," Paul said softly, "Diego Martinez, and that boy is me." Ellie was stunned, taking the photo with trembling hands. She had been an orphan since childhood and knew of her father only through vague stories from her grandmother Rosa, that he was a good man who had died in a car accident when she was young. "Your father was the one who first taught me judo," Paul continued, his voice full of emotion. "Not just the technique, but the spirit. He used to say, judo is not about showing off strength, but about protecting what you love. I saw that in you yesterday and today." Ellie's tears fell onto the photo. "Why didn't Sensei tell me sooner?" "Because I wanted you to find your own path," Paul replied. "Diego taught me that courage cannot be given, it must be discovered. And you did." Paul handed her a new gold belt. "This is your father's belt. He wanted me to give it to you when you were ready." Ellie hugged the belt tightly, feeling its weight, not just the physical weight, but the emotional legacy of the father she never truly knew. She understood that what had happened over the past 2 days had not just been about standing up to a bully, but about finding her true self. "Your father would be proud," Paul said, putting his hand on her shoulder. "Not only because you were brave, but because you knew how to use your strength to protect others." 3 months later, the hallways of Jefferson High have changed. Ellie walks confidently, no longer bowing her head or holding her books as a shield. She has become president of the Stop Bullying Club, which has more than 50 members. Tommy Rodriguez, now taller and more confident, became vice president. Lisa Chen led the peer advisory group, and Marcus Thompson created a hallway patrol to ensure the safety of younger students. Jake Morrison, after completing the counseling program, apologized to Ellie in front of the entire school. He was no longer her friend, but he was no longer her enemy either. Mitch even joined the Judo club that Ellie founded, looking for a positive way to change himself. Only Carla remained hostile, but she lost influence as her former friends realized her toxic behavior. Most importantly, Ellie has become a mentor to other bullied students. She teaches them not only basic self-defense techniques, but also about self-confidence and how to seek help. At the end-of-year graduation ceremony, Principal Morrison presented Ellie with the Most Influential Student Award. When she walked onto the stage, the entire audience stood up and applauded. Mrs. Rosa sat in the front row, tears of joy welling up in her eyes. Ellie Martinez taught us. The principal said that sometimes the smallest person can make the biggest changes. She turned pain into strength, fear into courage. In her speech, Ellie said, "I used to think that staying silent was the easiest way to survive, but I've learned that sometimes the quietest voice can speak the loudest. We all have the power to protect each other. We just have to be brave enough to stand up." That evening in her beloved dojo, Ellie donned her father's yellow belt and performed the final kata of the course. Each movement was graceful and powerful, demonstrating the harmony of technique and spirit. Sensei Paul watched with a proud smile. "Diego, he thought your daughter has become exactly what you wanted her to be, a warrior who protects others." As Ellie completed the kata and bowed, she looked up at the picture of her father that sat on the dojo's small altar. For the first time in her life, she felt completely at peace with who she had become, no longer the shy little girl, but a brave young woman ready to protect those who needed protecting. That was the real legacy her father left behind. Not just judo technique, but the courage to stand up for what was right no matter how difficult.